So let me start with what I thought was really key to begin with, because this is something that people don't, they think they all are interested in consciousness, but they don't really know what that is. In some very key, I want to introduce or plant the seed for a very key perspective. And that is to ask the question, what is consciousness? And then to offer you an answer that I hope you'll chew on for a while. And it's that consciousness is an aspect of energy. All energy is consciousness. Whether you're talking about oil energy, nuclear energy, wind energy, sun energy, earth energy, human energy, it doesn't matter. It's all conscious. And what is that, that consciousness, what is it for? What does it do for energy? The answer is that it creates feeling. Consciousness is the feeling of the energy. So what you have is this energy that's, flowing or burning or contracting or expanding around the world, in the world. And it wants to know what kind of experience it is creating. So feeling is the way that energy experiences itself. We're all, and let me back up even a step further. Energy is the motion of space. And that's a definition from physics. So when space, which is typically very, very quiet and very still and unmoving, when it starts to move, it transforms, and we don't call it space anymore, we call it energy. So energy is space in motion. Couple things I would say about space itself. There is a structure to it. There are, when I say a structure, that I don't have the drawings anymore. I used to have some drawings. I'm going to have to remake those drawings. But there were just a number of times that I've, moved into a state of consciousness in which I could see the structure of space. And you know what it looks like? It looks like a three-dimensional weaving of some sort. And within that structure, and when I say structure, hang on, let me see here. Maybe I can draw you sort of a poor idea of it. The whole idea, you guys might not be able to see this. Whoops, hang on. The whole idea is that there are these, see that? That is kind of what the structure of space looks like, except each one of these lines is a bunch of little beads. And it looks like a necklace strung, throughout space. And it's absolutely gorgeous. And it pulses. And you can see that it's alive. So, and I've seen that too many times to count. And other things that I have drawn pictures of that I wish I was a better artist. But so what we have is this space begins to move, and once it moves, it becomes energy, and that energy is conscious. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy, and energy is the motion of consciousness. They're equal. It's not that one is subservient to the other. Neither one exists. If you eliminate the consciousness, then the motion stops. If you eliminate the motion, the consciousness stops. So it becomes really, really key then to ask, why is energy creating feeling? what is the point of that? The point, again, is the feedback. And so what you have here is that consciousness ends up creating this feeling for itself, and that is the nature of consciousness, or what I often shorten it to say conscious energy. It's to create a situation. So imagine that this is you now. You're just a bundle of conscious energy running through the world. Your whole goal as a conscious being is to create situations that you can feel, so that you can assess the motion of your own energy and whether or not it's good or not. So that you'll know from your own feedback, does that feel good? Is that something that I want to continue to create? Is that something that I need to modify or change? There's a whole lot of people creating a whole lot of crap right now. And they're not realizing, they don't see how it works, and they don't understand consciousness. And so the result is that they keep on creating a lot of awful stuff and then saying, oh, why does God let us suffer? God doesn't let us suffer. We create our own suffering, and then we don't remedy that. So just, let me start with that, emphasizing the fact that we are conscious energy, and energy. And so here's the hidden thing in there that I really want you to ponder when all this is done, when we're done talking. If energy is the motion of consciousness, and that encompasses, unlimited amounts of energy, that should give you a clue as to how powerful you are. And the goal is to develop your power to impact whatever you want to impact, or to generate whatever you want to generate, or to halt whatever you want to halt, or to modify whatever. So that's the important thing. Consciousness is very, very powerful, and we do not use it very well at all. And we're learning, we're getting there. People are starting to get it. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I wanted to kind of go right into robes, and that whole, I learned so much stuff with the robes and the things that they showed me. So I was meeting with them in 80, 81, and I think we had our last meeting in 82. So I'm still, this is what, 30 some years later, 38, 39 years later, and I'm still figuring out, learning from the things that they showed me. And not everything is in the book, because I have to be honest, I didn't want to write the book in the first place, and I didn't want to believe half of the stuff that they showed me.
Right.
And so I put in what I could believe, what I could kind of see was a possibility. But since then, there's been even more stuff that I've thought, oh, well, maybe I should have said that, maybe I shouldn't have. And there were a few things that I left out because I thought it would hamper people's. One of the things the robes wanted us to do was to come to this place where we took personal responsibility for ourselves, for everything about ourselves. And I left those things out that I thought would allow us to jump right to the next technological experiment or development, and we would skip the developmental process that was absolutely necessary. And I didn't want that to happen. So I left out some inventions, and I left out some medical stuff, etc. But beyond that,
Penny, do you remember what it was that you left out? Could you sort of give us a snippet of what you left out?
Okay, so one of the things that I left out was their comments. There was a spot in the book, I think it was in the book, it's in one of my books, where I talked about having I was going to college, and I had gone to class that night, and I saw a UFO. You know, a bunch of us after class, we were going to go down by the river and sit on the grass and drink some wine and say, thank God this course is almost over. And so we get down there. There was probably 8 of us, and we walked down, and this is a beautiful, beautiful part of Michigan. It's right on Lake St. Clair. It's Grosse Pointe Woods. It's a very elite neighborhood. And we had 2 or 3 blankets and, you know, half a dozen bottles of wine. And we're just about to spread the blankets out because we had just arrived. And there was this UFO right there. It was probably, I'm going to say, maybe between 100 and 200 feet out from the shore. And it was, I'm going to say, maybe 25 feet above the water. And it just, we all just stopped dead in our tracks. And it was a domed thing with this band of lights going around it. And you could see the bands, you know, going around. And it just hovered there above the water. And while it was hovering, I had this feeling all the way through me that this was for my benefit. The rest were incidental. But that it was really critical for me to see that. And part of the reason was because I was struggling with the whole Kundalini thing at that point. And one of the side effects of Kundalini is you begin to see some of your history, some of your background, some of your future, you see your whole self. So I just mentioned that, I think, in the book, but I didn't say anything about the conversations that we had after with the robes. You know, I saw this UFO, you know, did you guys do that, was kind of my attitude. And they were like, no. And I said, well, who did that? Who was that? How did that get there? What did I see? And they said, you saw some beings from another place, another time and place. And the conversation that followed was fairly short, but it was extremely impactful for myself, because one of the things I was knowing at that point was that I had come from another civilization to work in this one as part of an assignment that I hoped would get me an invitation to join a team that travels around the cosmos and seeds life in various places, and then nurtures that life along until they come to the great fork in the road, which is, are we going to create or are we going to destroy? That's the fork in the road. And your energies are either going to be destructive or they're going to be constructive. And so that was a big kind of a, yes, that was your people coming to check on you.
Yeah.
And I was so disturbed.
Your human mind was disturbed, because this conversation is just everywhere now, Penny. Like, everyone's having it. It's like, I'm an alien and I'm here to help this planet. It's like, it's everywhere. But back then in the 80s, it was disturbing. But something that you said that I think was key, absolutely key, you know, in all the conversations that I have with many people, I kind of pick out their aha moments. All energy is creative. All thought is energy. All thought is creative, all of it.
Right.
But you said the difference between negative and positive thought is that negative thought destroys, so it creates by destroying, and positive thought creates by manifesting. So this was just an aha moment that you said when we were talking, that because everything you think and everything you vibe, as you say, you're creating through your thoughts or your vibration. You perceive your vibration through your feelings. That's how you perceive it. And so what are you doing? Are you creating or destroying? Sometimes we want to destroy stuff, right? So sometimes we want to destroy stuff as a part of a new creation. So for instance, to make it really normal, people could be in their job, they could be hating their job, they could be really wanting to leave their job, so they think really negatively, right? And then they go, I hate this bloody job, I hate my boss, I hate, and then they get the sack, and they're like, but I did nothing wrong. And then they go, poor me, why did I get the sack? And their negative creative thought has created the destruction of their jobs, because really they're wanting something else, but they're focused on the negative. So they're destroying what they have manifested, called job, right?
So one of the things that's really important to understand, and this impacts your health, is that all feeling is a field of frequencies in the body or in the universe or in the family or in the job. And there's individual fields of emotion or feeling, and then there's group, and then there's couple, and there's family, and there's huge collective fields. So if you have a field of really, really negative energies, and you're not even aware of that, you could be working away over here and not realizing that over here is the exact opposite or counter to that. And you have to go looking and digging. And the second thing that you have to do is, if you really want to make something happen, you have to have action with that. We are not powerful enough yet to think our way into manifesting. I mean, eventually, yes. Down the road, yes. But now here's a story that I think is really important. I got to the point, I had all my children when I was 18 through 23, 24. So in 6 years, I had 4 children. And I got to age 31, and I'm realizing, oh my God, I finally figured out how to love. I finally know what love is. I finally understand what children need. And part of that was the Kundalini awakening to what I had been before I came here. And I was part of a group of people who were highly, highly trained to raise children. In the Pleiadian system, the highest job, the most powerful job you can get is to be allowed to raise children, to have children, and then to raise them. Nothing else is as important as that job. And that was what I was all of a sudden seeing. And then I'm looking back at what I did here as a human and going, excuse my French, oh shit. This is a total disaster. So it got to this point where I was thinking over and over, I had my tubes tied when I was 24, because I thought, at this rate, I'm going to have 14 kids like grandma. And so I ended up getting my tubes tied. So at 31, I'm thinking, oh, gee, I finally understand how to do this. I'm remembering how we did it, what's important, how to shape an individual, just everything about raising children. And it was too late. And so I kept wishing that somebody would leave just a little baby on my doorstep. And I would very quietly just take that baby and I would raise her.
So what were the things you wished you had known? Do you remember any specifics?
Oh my God. We could be here for 6 years.
Did you have the Kundalini around 31 then? I don't remember how old you were. Okay.
Yes, I was 31. And so I had all of this understanding about the psyche, about consciousness, and I'm watching these amazing little beings develop that were my children at that point. And I'm thinking, I've totally ruined them. oh my gosh, and I'm alternately crying. When Kundalini hits, you will cry for about 2 years. And a lot of tears in that period of time, because you see everything that you didn't see before. You know so much, and there's nothing you can't see, and the grief is overwhelming. And you have to plow through that period of mourning, because the old self is dying. All of the things that you didn't know, you can't fault yourself for what you didn't know. The only thing you can do is put yourself together fresh and start from there and move forward with a whole new way of being. So what's the moral of the story about the wish for the little baby? When my daughter gets 18, she gets pregnant.
I shouldn't laugh.
I know. And she leaves me with a baby. And I was like, but not now. I'm already on another track. I've already given up. So it was a very, very difficult period. And so I took this child and I started raising her. And I raised her until she was 4. And then her mother, who was in the army, who was in Germany, and had fallen in love and got married, et cetera, said, I want my first daughter back. And I was like, ooh. And I gave her back. And we both agree now that I should not have.
Right.
That I should have kept her. Because too much bonding was broken at that point. So, and it never occurred to me that I could have raised that child with full honor, and this is your mother, and isn't she amazing, and look at her, she's doing this, and she would have thought that that was the way mothers were, and she would have loved it, and she would have been fine with that, but we weren't. So we were still pretty much caught in a lot of the old thinking about how things should
be.
It's kind of refreshing or nice to hear that somebody as amazing as you made mistakes.
Oh God.
I know.
Oh, I often joke that I have made every mistake you can possibly make, because I never really fit in the culture, but I kept trying.
I'm getting a better understanding of you now, Penny. Is this your first human experience?
No. Well, let's talk about that. So we often talk about successive lives.
Right. Yeah.
They aren't really successive.
Mm-hmm.
When you insert yourself into the physical system, you insert yourself simultaneously on a track that has all these nodes that are various incarnations that line up to create a certain outcome that you're after. So they're not really successive lives. So yes, the first time I've been inserted, but I'm having you become aware of all your lives at once, and there's a lot of them. There's typically a couple hundred, and all of those flow in to the energy system that is my individual consciousness, and they impact that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not something that I usually share with people, because it's too hard to get your mind around.
No, yeah, it is hard to get your mind.
I think about that all the time, though.
Yeah, but I just asked my mob. You said it's typically a couple of hundred, and they said immediately, depending on what the person wishes to create.
That's right.
Some people don't want to insert themselves so deeply, let's say, and so they don't create a couple of hundred, they create a few.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And then there are the sojourners that come in, and they're just here for one lifetime. That's it. They're sort of dipping in for some reason, and that's it.
So the ship was a Palladian ship. So the robe said to you that's like when you say mob, it's like as a soul, you get to experience many different dimensional experiences, planets, let's call them planets. So Palladian, okay. So depending on what life you're currently leading at the time that you say, because you can be either a spirit or you can be incarnate into a different society, And you
Right.
can say from that perspective, either your spirit perspective or your incarnated perspective, I'm going to go and help Earth, right? So from your Palladian perspective, you said, I'm going to be a part of the Earth experience. I'm going to insert myself into the Earth timeline and be a part of the shift. So it's interesting because, you know, you've had this wild Kundalini experience, like, woohoo, and not a lot of people have that. So everyone experiences their awakening in different ways because there's different intention with the Earth life experience. So, yeah. So your intention was to be the teacher, and so you had this wild Kundalini experience. It's like they let you live this third dimensional life up until 31, and then they went, bang! Like, okay, now you're going to remember everything.
And I did understand why. I wasn't left totally alone, but I'll come back to that. Remind me to say something about the soul. But they leave you alone for the most part and make sure that you don't remember any little tweaks and assistances and things like that, so that you can really, really absorb. This was the thing that I was doing, was absorbing how these people live, how they think, their religion, their financial, their medical, their educational, their technological, you know, all of that. And once you have that, once ready or not, you know, boom, on goes the switch or the awakening, and then you're absolutely overwhelmed. And everything that you have done or been or known is right there at your fingertips. And so, you know, there was my name, and there was my history, and there was my experience as a parental figure in this other culture. In the Pleiades, there were, you know, all my past, quote unquote, past lives, my other lives contributing. And I was aware that this was like a final exam for me. And I feel like, I don't know if I'm passing or flunking, but I did quit. I did try to quit. I went back to one of my teachers, and there's something, I'll just say that one of the things that I am a specialist in other cultures as well, is a specialist with the eyes. You make things happen with your eyes, and you can turn them on and off. But that whole thing, that whole awareness of the wholeness of my experience was totally overwhelming, because I was seeing where I had planned to go, and I was going, what? Are you out of your mind? You know, there's no way I can't. And, you know, and so I went and I said, I'm going to quit. And they just kind of turned their eyes off. You know, my teacher, my main teacher, Makum Rak, just kind of shut me out. And I came back and I cried for 3 days. And then I finally thought, okay, I'm just going to do what I can. I'll do what I can. You know, I'm only one person. I'll do what I can. And at the time, that was really amounted to nothing that I thought was going to be of value or useful. And, you know, it was actually my relationship with the elves here on the farm that took me into the next realm of consciousness. And then because I kept a whole journal about all of my meetings and conversations with the elves, because I had this deal going with them, that actually broke into just a huge amount of attention that I didn't want. And there was no way to get out of it once I signed the rights to the book. And they promoted that book all over the US. And I think I must have done 4 or 5 radio interviews a day for a couple of years. And by the end of that, I was like, you know, okay, I needed to write. That's one of the things that that gets coded into your system as a need. People call it their purpose. And I had a need to write. And so I thought, okay, let me write my story. Evolving Human actually came out second. And then I thought, well, maybe it'll help if I explain these robes guys. So that, when they came, they said, we want you to write this down. And I was like, no. But then later it was like, well, maybe that'll help. So, all things considered, I ended up writing more and more, and then finally thought, hey, maybe this is a way to teach and to really get people around the world to wake up, because the people who don't wake up are going to have a really hard time surviving, because they will not have practiced using their consciousness. And we have some serious things that are facing us next year. And, I don't want to, I'm trying to counter those things. And I'm working on that quite a bit. And so far, no good. So far, I haven't been able to counter that. But we'll see. If the event happens, well, I didn't succeed. If it does happen, well, if it doesn't happen, then I did succeed. So all things considered, you just do what you can. Using the tools that you have. And this is one of the things that I have really come to appreciate in the last few years is the power of consciousness and what you can do with even a half a try. Because once you learn to use it, there's other beings who are looking for people to join up with, not just human. These are other than human beings, and they will join in and they will lend their power.
Yeah.
That's what is needed. You have to invite beings who have more power than you, and then you work all together as one. And there's some pretty amazing practice sessions that I have been in that are practice for that kind of working with others that are just, I have to tell you this. You get picked up and you go on board a ship and you're in a weightless environment and you have a different body. It's kind of scrawny looking. It's really scrawny looking. But you move into this weightless environment, and then you're in this big, it almost feels like you're in a fishbowl. You're in this room or this space in which we dance. And everybody is moving around everybody else. And you have to be aware of the entire group of people. And there's probably 30 or 40 beings dancing and practicing this absolutely smooth, graceful consciousness that allows you to, to work smoothly with other beings. And those are the beings that you then can invite to add to your own energy when you want something to happen or something good. So, does that make sense?
Interesting. I want to get to the questions that people ask too, but I have a quick question about this because I know exactly what you're talking about. When I was teaching energy healing workshops, you dance with people, and our humans don't know how to dance with each other energetically. They just walk. They're in their own bubble called what I've got to do, what I've got to get done. I've got to pick up that person. I've got to do that. I've got to do that. And they're not dancing with the energies around them. They're not connected. They're like separate little bubbles moving.
Right.
And, I learned that when I was teaching energy healing, that simultaneously I'm tuning into everyone all at once. Like I'm tuning into their consciousness. I know what they're thinking, and I'm doing that here too. I'm kind of listening to what people are vibing, thinking. And that's the dance you're talking about. Like you're dancing with you're working in unison because you're kind of communicating telepathically, which we have to we remember how to do as humans. But so one of the things that came up was that a lot of us have family and friends who are unconscious. And you were talking about, the shift. Like when we move to the shift, the people that are in their, more awakened will move and the others will have a hard time. okay, so there's a couple of stories, like there's like two separate earths, and the people that don't wake up will stay on one earth and the ones will go. What's your take on that? Because I know that there are people that have friends and family that don't, that don't really want to have this conversation. And
I know.
What happens to them? Do they, what happens?
Here are some of the things that I know because of my experiences of being able to move into the past, the future, or an alternate present.
Mm-hmm. When
you have a reality system, and that reality system is God, what would be the best way? Okay, the reality system is composed of millions, billions of these pockets or the three-dimensional regions of frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And some contain a building, and some contain a human, and some contain an animal or a tree or a bug or whatever. And the people in that frequency zone dress a certain way, and they have certain technologies, and they eat certain foods, and they have certain customs, etc. And then it all sort of becomes disorganized, and then it shifts, and some new thing is introduced. And that new thing causes everybody to stop dressing that way and stop eating that way and stop that technology, because there's new stuff over here. And this new stuff is a different frequency set. So to then get your mind around the question that you just asked, what you see when you start moving around is that 1870 is still going on. And 1232 AD is still going on. And the BC stuff is still going on. It's just a different frequency matrix. So when we come to the question of what's going on with the two earths, what I keep thinking, and I'm watching, but I haven't seen anything that makes common sense, because the truth is always really simple. People who complicate things are usually way off base. So that what you see is that there's a different frequency signature for each one of these times. And if we're going to come into a time when things split, then what I see is that we're going to move into this new world, new technology, new dress, new kinds of food, new nutritional standards, new medical tools, and new education process, and blah, blah, blah. And the people who are interested in that are going to eventually die and be reborn into that. But the people who are interested in the old, they're going to die and be reborn right back where they were. They're not going to move into the new zone that is transitioning, or that is being born, we'll say, out of the old frequencies.
Yeah. I get it.
So, some are going to move on and some are not.
Yeah. I was having this conversation with my mom recently. A lot of conscious people say, I'm not coming back to this planet. I don't want to, I want to get out of the reincarnation cycle. And I was having a chat to them, and I want to say, but they don't understand that if you move in this life, if you move consciously, when you do reincarnate, you're reincarnating back into a different experience. So you're not coming back into a 3D experience. So why wouldn't you want to come back into a physical experience that has a whole different set of rules? It's a higher, it's shifted. So
it's really important to understand that when, and I think you and I have talked about this, but I'll share it here. When you go to the other side, people who have died, go to another world, very similar, that's just a lot less dense than this one is. And I've just been traipsing back and forth there because of my ex-husband, who just died in December. And And so what you see after you go back and forth between this world that we call living and that world that we think of as the dead, what you see is everybody over there is planning to come back here. And it's like, what's wrong with this picture? Everybody here is like, I'm ascending, I'm out of here, place sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then, everybody over there is lined up, and the thing that is not understood is that the goal, now this comes to the idea of being a soul. What is a soul? Let me just ask you guys that before I say anything. What do you think a soul is? Any definition you want to give? Religious?
It's individual